This is draft season. No, wait, it's draft week. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Draft Season Podcast. The smiling guys you're looking at, he's Eric Crocker. I'm John Schmeelk, and that, of course, is Tony Pauline. We're here, guys. Draft week is finally here. It's been a long time coming. We're recording this on Monday, so the draft is just 3 days away. We'll have another episode for you, by the way, on Wednesday when we do our final mock draft of the year. This podcast is presented by Tommy Hilfiger, a PVH brand and an official partner of the New York Giants. So since we're doing our mock on Wednesday, I figured this would be a good time to get the latest buzz from Tony, what he's hearing around the league in terms of what might happen on Thursday. Then we'll go through a bunch of what I consider to be key questions for Thursday's draft that might really dictate who goes where, when they go, and just how the draft will kind of operate. And then we'll go through the rest of your fan evaluation requests here as we do our final non-mock draft episode of the draft season up before the draft. All right, you guys ready to roll?
Do it, sir.
All right, let's do it. Tone, let's start with you. You had a story up over the weekend. We'll touch on some of your news throughout the show. Anything you want to hit right off the top here?
No, I think the biggest surprise that I'm hearing right now, and we will talk about other things I'm hearing throughout the show, but I think the biggest one that may catch people by surprise is a lot of teams have Charles Cross as their number one left tackle, ahead of Evan Neal, ahead of Aquanu. It's either Cross or Aquanu across the board, and a lot of teams have Cross number one. Doesn't mean he's going to be the first tackle taken. It makes sense in the spirit that he's the best possible left tackle. I mean, or he's the purest left tackle. I've stated all along, I don't think Aquanu can play left tackle. I think Evan Neal's going to struggle to play left tackle. I think if you're looking to fit a guy at that spot, it's Charles Cross, which is why a lot of teams have him rated as the top tackle in the draft.
All right, and so I'm going to ask both of you guys this question. And this wasn't even on the list, but it just came to mind. You talk about teams shooting for the best left tackle with Charles Cross. Will there be a team that shoots for the best, maybe not just cornerback, but player in the draft in Derek Stingley? And he might go a lot higher than a lot of other people think. Tony, you're nodding. Why?
Well, because literally, and just an hour before we started this podcast, I put a story out there that the Houston Texans can actually upend the early part of the draft by taking Derek Stingley with that third pick. So you kind of beat me to it. I was kind of saving that for one of the other questions. But yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing, and I heard it on Saturday, kind of held off on it because I don't, run with things when I first hear them. I try and get some confirmation. Talked about it yesterday. Got confirmation this morning that, Derek Stingley could be the first cornerback taken, and he could go as high as number 3 to the Houston Texans.
And by the way, I think, Croc, there's a good argument for this, right? He has the best single season of cornerback tape we've seen. He tested fine. He wasn't phenomenal, but it was good. Last year he suffered that Lisfranc injury. Daniel Jeremiah and Matt Miller reported it this week, and I think, Tony, you had it too, that he injured that Lisfranc in August and tried to play with it this year. So that explains the tape this year that was poor. And then if you look at LSU's defensive tape from 2020, the COVID year, Neil Farrell's tape was bad. Damone Clark's tape was bad. That whole LSU defense was a mess. So I think teams might figure out a way to convince themselves in a draft, Croc, where you don't have a lot of blue chippers. Well, Derek Stingley can be a blue chipper if he plays like he did as a freshman.
I've played on teams and been in those situations where it's a little bit less than ideal. And you can see kind of just a dip in some of the play, as opposed to when things are clicking, everyone's turned up. Then you just have this extra little bounce in your step. And obviously you don't want a guy that kind of, goes with the emotions of the team. You want a guy that's going to stay up all the time, but it's just kind of a part of the human element of this entire thing. We have seen Derek Stingley at his best. When he's at his best, he's locked in. Again, I always bring up the Alabama games because he had a tough time against Devontae Smith. But outside that, you talk about someone who has the ability to run with any type of receiver. He has terrific technique. When he's locked in, he is the best corner in this class. I think a lot of people are putting Sauce Gardner over him right now because it's a little safer, right? Like you just know a little bit more of exactly what you're getting. He hasn't had the injuries. The tape is cleaner. Some of it could be due to the competition level, not playing against the Alabamas and those type of schools week in, week out. But overall, if you just told me who has the higher upside, I would lean towards Derek Stingley. It's just tough because you don't know exactly which version of Stingley you're going to get.
Yeah, and John, to your point, what scouts usually do is they will look at a prospect and they will look at the things that he does well and the things that he can do. And when you're looking at the things that Derek Stingley does well and that he can do, you go back to that 2019 film, it was a thing of beauty. I mean, that may be over dramatic, but the guy had just a clairvoyance of knowing when the ball was in the air, going in his direction, to get his head back around and position himself against receivers to make plays on the ball. And that was as a true freshman. And a lot of college cornerbacks struggle at. This guy was doing it regularly as a freshman. So, you know, if you're going by what can this guy do, and you go by the 2019 film, he's one of the top 2 players in this draft. There's no doubt. He's ahead of Aiden Hutchinson. There's no doubt about it. Question is, 2 mediocre years, plus that Les Frank injury. I mean, those are injuries that sometimes reoccur, which you better have your medical staff behind you if you're going to draft this guy early because of that type of injury.
And I'll throw this out too, and this will kind of go to our larger question: who will go first overall? What does the top 4 look like? You know, you're sitting there with the Texans at 3, with Lovie Smith as their head coach. You know what Lovie Smith teams don't play? Press man. Then you have Robert Saleh at 4. You know what Robert Saleh defenses don't play? Press man. That's what Sauce Gardner does, right? Like if you're picking a press man guy, go pick Sauce Gardner. You know, Stingley is a good press man corner too, but he's shown he can play off as well. So to me, I think the fit with Stingley at either 3 or 4 is probably better than Sauce too, just based on style. Right, Crop? Is that makes a difference with corners?
It depends on which scheme you have him going to, because you know, obviously zone schemes can be different. I think if you look at Lovie Smith, he's one of the few coaches that still run a lot of 2 high cover 2
cover 2
defense. And I think with Sauce Gardner's length, he can be terrific in that defense. Matter of fact, I might take him in that defense where he's able to get his hands on guys, read through, and kind of squeeze and shrink windows. I think he'd actually excel in that, as opposed to maybe Derek Stingley. And again, I mean, Derek Stingley is a big-time athlete. He'd be good, I feel like, in any scheme. But if you're talking about, like, kind of really fitting it to a T, then Sauce might be a little bit better in Lovie's. But, again,
his length, right, makes a difference there. It's his length that makes the difference, yeah.
And maybe even you talk about Saleh. Although it is kind of considered a cover 3, we all know, we've seen what the Seattle 3 defense was, and we know Saleh came from that with Seattle, and then going to Jacksonville, ran that same type of coverage and understanding it. They do a lot of press bailing and reading some concepts from there, a lot of fire zone type stuff where you can play at the line of scrimmage as well. So there are ways to tweak it to where Sauce would still fit in it. But yeah, if you are starting to play more primarily off, and we've seen some of the defenses play a little bit more quarters where you have guys playing about 8 yards off, that might suit Stingley a little bit better than Sauce Gardner.
This is pretty amazing, guys. We're 3 days out of the draft. We don't know who the number 1 pick is. So I'm going to ask you, Tony, who's the number 1 pick?
I think if the owner has his way, it's going to be Aiden Hutchinson, but I'm going to go with Trayvon Walker. I'm going to go with Trayvon Walker because that's what Balky wants. He's a Balky type of defensive end. He's long, he's athletic, he's lean, he's got those long arms, he's versatile, he's got a much higher upside than Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson's a good player. You know, if arm length is important to you, Trayvon Walker's arms are 3 inches longer than Aiden Hutchinson, which is pretty significant. You know, you're probably going to have less bumps in the road with Aiden Hutchinson. I've been a big Trayvon Walker guy. I love his upside. It's going to be interesting, but I'm going to go roll with the article that I posted a month ago before everyone else says it, and I'm going to say it's going to be Trayvon Walker.
How about you, Croc? What do you think?
And I can see that being the case. Again, he'll hear more about what's going on behind the scenes with that, but just kind of knowing what Trent Baalke wants. If you look at a lot of the defensive linemen that he drafted while being with the San Francisco 49ers, Alden Smith, right? I mean, that's as long as it gets with his arm length. And he drafted Alden Smith in the top 10, maybe around pick 6 or pick 7, where I don't know if other people had Alden Smith going that high. And then he kind of followed up with that some years later, drafted Eric Armstead, extremely long defensive lineman. DeForest Buckner, extremely long defensive lineman. He's really big on the measurables of these guys that are pass rushers and how to utilize that. So, if he goes Trayvon Walker, I know who won't be shocked. Well, Tony, obviously, but I wouldn't be shocked at either.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be Hutchinson. I think it's probably going to be Walker. I would not rule out Ekwonu either. I just think that even though they have their tackles in place now, maybe you start Ekwonu a guard, you move him outside. I just think you have to maximize Trevor Lawrence. And I understand that, these other guys, you like him as pass rushers, but if Trevor Lawrence doesn't work out, none of this other stuff matters. Like, you're starting from scratch again. So I think you want to maximize your quarterback. So I would not rule out Ekwonu, but if you made me place the bet, now I'm with you guys. I think it'll be Travon Walker as well. All right, 2, 3, 4. We've kind of touched on these a little bit. Best guess, Croc, let's start with you. How do you think 2, 3, 4, which is Detroit, Houston, the Jets, looks at in this draft before the Giants go at 5?
I really like at number 2 overall, Detroit Lions. They're on the clock, and Aiden Hutchinson's still there. I think they take a guy like him. I think he kind of just fits that blue collar mindset, especially what Campbell is trying to build there with that mentality. You want to go Thibodeau because, like just that it seems like he has more of that freakish upside, but again, his headspace. And I don't know how that's going to mesh with a guy like Dan Campbell, who seems like really into like you being a real football guy. And again, the Thibodeau things where he was talking about, I didn't go to Alabama because they're all about football there. I'm not sure how well those comments go over with a guy like Dan Campbell. So at 2, I have Detroit Lions taking Aiden Hutchinson in this scenario. And then at 3, and I like the defensive back. I'm going to lean Sauce Gardner just because the length and the cover 2 and how I feel like he can fit in that and also still be able to play man and mix those things in. You're not going to run 100% cover 2, but they run a good amount of it to where I feel like he can fit both of those. And then at 4, finally, you have the Jets taking Kayvon Thibodeau out of Oregon.
Yeah, I think Detroit's going to take the player that Jacksonville doesn't take. So
yeah, I agree.
Walker, number 1, they go with Aiden Hutchinson. It's the natural fit for everything Eric Crocker said. Oh, no, yeah, by the way, he plays his college football in Michigan. So you get a lot of hometown flavor there. They'll be able to put some fannies in the seats. Number 3, listen, I'm going to ride the wave. I'm going to go with what I just heard, Derek Staley. We'll see. I'll either look like a hero or look like a fool. We'll see what happens. Number 4 is very interesting. Thibodeau would make sense, but I'm told the Jets don't, really won't draft him and don't like him, especially at number 4. I think I'm told that number 4 is too high for Jermaine Johnson. If the Jets are able to pull off a trade at number 10 to move that pick for whoever it may be, Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, I think that 4th pick is going to be defense, maybe Ahmad Gardner. Otherwise, it could be Ike Ekwonu. He's going to be in the conversation as well. As someone said to me about Ike Ekwonu, if he doesn't play left tackle, can't play right tackle, you could have yourself a Hall of Fame left guard. Granted, the Jets would need him for right tackle, but still, if you can upgrade that offensive line, you can protect Zach Wilson like you were talking about protecting Trevor Lawrence, you make your team that much better.
Tony, I'll say this. If Mekhi Becton can get his act together, right, and you put him next to Ike Ekwonu, and you want to run the ball, I mean, you're looking at like Walter Jones, Steve Hutchinson levels of moving people. That could be ridiculous.
It could. And I think that's the amazing thing. Everybody talks about how this is a boring draft. A year ago, if we had done the show, the first 3 picks, we'd have got to it in 30 seconds because everyone knew who it was. Here we are. Okay, we know 1 and 2. The fun starts at 3. I mean, that to me is the intrigue of this draft.
And, I think the Giants at 5 and 7, I'll touch there, and then we'll kind of go, we'll talk about 6 with Carolina too. This is kind of like, for me, the next phase. I think the Giants are looking at either, Neal or Cross as the 2 tackles they'll consider. Ekwonu probably off the board, but again, I think Cross and Neal are, for a team with Brian Dable and Mike Kafka from Kansas City, I think they're a team that's going to look to pass the ball an awful lot. I think you want the 2 better pass protectors in either Neal or Cross. But again, Ekwonu, I think, could easily be in the mix there too, given his tools. And then, I think 6 and 7 is interesting, right? Let's start here. Do you guys think Carolina's taking a quarterback? I do not think they're taking one at 6. I think, frankly, Carolina's in one of the worst draft spots I've seen in a long time at 6, where they need a quarterback. There's not one good enough to take, and they don't have another draft pick till the 4th round. I mean, my goodness, what a tough spot for them to be in with the coach needing to win now. They actually, I think, have a pretty good roster, but they just don't have a left tackle. They don't have a quarterback, and they don't have any easy answers to fill both spots right now. So what are your guys' guts? Croc, let's start with you. What you think Carolina is going to do at 6?
Well, they should trade out.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
seeing the reports this morning are that there are a lot of teams that are looking to trade out of the top 10. Not enough teams trying to trade up into the top 10. So, who's going to trade up for a quarterback? I don't know if we'll see that. But if I'm Carolina, especially with a lot of the holes that they have and the weird dynamic at the quarterback position that they have right now, you need a quarterback. But like you said, that guy in the top 10 isn't there. So hopefully, I'm pretty sure they are hoping that they can trade back to around 15, 16. Maybe there's a team that wants to go up for one of these tackles that are flying off to the board. And then from there, they can take a quarterback where it'll fit more of the value.
Yeah, I never thought they were going to take a quarterback. People have taken Kenny Pickett, whatever. I said all along, Charles Cross is their guy. Now the question is, does Charles Cross last that long? I think the thing is Matt Rule needs a quarterback because Matt Rule needs to win in 2022. But if the general manager takes a quarterback and the quarterback fails, the general manager is also going to be out. So the general manager, Scott Fitterer, is looking long-term. And you're going to get a good player at number 6. You may not get a player that's going to result in a lot of wins in 2022 at number 6, but you're going to get a good offensive lineman there that you can start to really build the team around. Obviously, the mistake was trading for Sam Darnold last year. That was a huge mistake when they couldn't get to Deshaun Watson. I think what's going to happen is, and I've been reporting, is there could be a trade day 2 or day 3 of the draft. Carolina brings in Baker Mayfield for a year. What will happen is the Cleveland Browns will actually pay the lion's share of Baker Mayfield's guaranteed contract because they're boxed into a corner. The Browns will, in essence, be paying for a draft pick, which will probably be in 2023.
All right, so I'll follow up. Is there going to be a trade here, guys, in the top 10 or heck, even a top 15? I think maybe you might get one towards the middle of the round with somebody trying to jump a team for a specific player, but I don't see there being a top 10 trade here. I'm going to, say something crazy. I think general managers are actually going to trust their boards and realize that it's not worth it to trade up for one of these quarterbacks. I know it's crazy, but I think it might actually happen. So that's my feel. I think you might have some movement around like those Ravens, Saints, Eagles, where a team tries to move on, maybe get an offensive lineman or something like that. But for me, sitting here right now, I do not believe we're going to see a trade near the top of this draft. Do you guys agree or disagree?
I disagree.
All right,
I think Seattle, they have been known to take whatever value they can get to move back and collect some more capital. They will do it. And
but who's moving up?
Well, if a team doesn't have to give up as much as, say, they would have to give up to, get up to 6 to the Carolina Panthers, then, all right, like I can move into the top 10 and I don't have to give up a ton just because the Seattle Seahawks are notorious for moving up. I think that's the team I'm looking at right now. I just don't see them as a top 10 picking 10 and they always trade back. Always.
Yeah, I don't think there should be any trades in the top 10, but historically there are. And who's going to trade up? You could get Washington, maybe even Houston to move up if they want to secure one of the receivers. If the Jets are sitting there at 10, they haven't traded, and they think the Jets are going to take either Garrett Wilson or Jameson Williams, and they want to secure one of those players, make a small move like that.
Yeah, I think that could be interesting. Croc, what do you think a team will be looking to trade up for, to Tony's point? A tackle, a wide receiver? What do you think they'll be looking for?
I'd say probably an edge rusher.
Okay.
I think there's like that first tier of guys that are probably going to the top 10. And then I think there's a little bit of a drop-off depending on how much you like a guy like George Karlaftis. Right, like that would be kind of that guy in that next tier of edge rusher. So if you are a team that's picking, let's say the Philadelphia Eagles, and they are looking to really improve that edge rusher position after having a guy like Graham and they have the injuries and whatnot, could they move up into the top 10 and maybe get a guy like Jermaine Johnson, who might not be the 4th overall pick, but definitely is that type of top 10 caliber guy, and some other teams might try to jump up to get him if he starts to, I don't want to say slide, but start to be around pick 9, pick 10.
Yeah, what happens if Thibodeau slides, right? What if he's sitting there at 8 or 9, and then a team might want to go him and get him too? Who knows?
All right, one thing I heard, an interesting thing, what I heard about Thibodeau when I reported last week is coaches really like Thibodeau. Front office people are very concerned about him. So we'll see whoever wins that battle will dictate where Thibodeau goes. If the coaches win that battle, Thibodeau's going to go very early. If Thibodeau starts to fall, that the front office is basically push the coaches back and say, listen, there's just too many red flags about it.
And Tony, I know you wrote about it. Do you think there could be movement at number 10 with the Jets?
Possibly. Listen, if Joe Douglas has his way, I mean, I reported it, I believe on Saturday was the first report, is that Douglas is ready to give up that 10 pick for Deebo Samuel. I confirmed it again yesterday, and I was also told that he would be happy to give up that 10 pick if he could pry DK Metcalf away from the Seattle Seahawks. Douglas needs to come away with a player that's going to provide immediate impact with that 10 selection to help Zach Wilson. Maybe you get it with Garrett Wilson. You're not really going to get it in September, October. I don't believe in Jameson Williams. You can get it with Deebo Samuel. You can get it with DK Metcalf. So I think he's going to be looking hard to move that pick for an established veteran that's going to produce from the scoring side of the ball.
All right, so let's ask this question then. When does the first quarterback go? You can either give me spot or you can give me team, however you want to handle it. Tony, what do you think?
Okay.
I think it's going to be the New Orleans Saints. I know a lot of people say Saints going to go defense and receiver, but I still think the New Orleans Saints, they bypass the quarterback position too often. I think it's going to be one of their first picks in round one. Could be Kenny Pickett.
Croc.
I was thinking New Orleans Saints as well. And Kenny Pickett, it just feels right? Like that feels like they got to fits what they want to do there, the culture of kind of what they've built. So definitely them. If not them, I mean, I don't see a quarterback getting past the Pittsburgh Steelers. Maybe, I mean, their offensive line hasn't been very good, and maybe there could be a guy that they feel like can help protect, their running back assets and quarterbacks that they have right there right now with Mitchell Trubisky. But I think they need that long-term guy, and they just don't have it. So if they can actually draft someone who can even sit behind the Mitchell Trubisky or compete and potentially beat them out, and they can start that era of the new guy now, I feel like that's the organization that can do it, especially with Mike Tomlin there.
Yeah, I'm going Steelers. Maybe they might move up a couple spots to do it. I don't know, but I think the Steelers will be the first team picking a quarterback. And I don't know if they're going to pick the local boy Kenny Pickett or they're going to go with Malik Willis. I love the Malik Willis fit there. I think it's a good place for him to develop, and it'll be a good place for him to kind of marinate in the NFL and learn how to play. So we'll see if that goes. We talked about the first three tackles already, probably top 10. When do you guys think Trevor Penning goes off the board? I'm thinking he's not getting past Baltimore. Any other spots that you would have kind of pegged for him as that fourth tackle? Tone.
Hot rumor right now is Seattle could take Pennington at 9. That was told to me last week. I kind of, you hear these things and then you kind of keep them at arm's distance. But when I spoke with more people, they said, yeah, there was some legitimacy to that. And that's a very Seattle Seahawks type of move. I mean,
yes, it is.
Everybody talks about the Seahawks. Oh, they're going to go offense. They're going to do this. And then they take Jordan Brooks. So you never really know what the Seattle Seahawks, that would basically be in tune with the fact that Seattle goes in a different direction from what everybody believes every year.
Croc, what do you think for Penning?
Yeah, between there, you talked about Baltimore. I brought up Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that can definitely use some offensive line help. He's going in the top 20 for sure. But I would start with where he said Seattle, because I mean that offensive line, they've been trying to improve for a while now. I just don't see Seattle picking at 9. So that's my only pause.
Hey, if they move back like 2 or 3 spots, they can still take them.
Yep.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Who's the first wide receiver taken? And for a bonus, you can tell me who's taking them too. Do you think is it Atlanta? Is it the Jets? And who do you think it is, Croc?
I'm going to go with Washington Commanders. I mean, they need a lot of help with their weapons there in that spot. And you have Terry McLaurin, and he's legit. But you got to kind of give them some more weapons outside of him. Now, I think we'll see what happens with Carson Wentz, but you want to put as many weapons around Carson Wentz as possible. Having a guy like Garrett Wilson, I think he fits kind of that mode of having that dynamic player to play opposite Terry McLaurin. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Washington Commanders.
Tone.
I'm going to say the Atlanta Falcons. It could be Jameson Williams, maybe Garrett Wilson. The Falcons need a ton of help, and they need a quarterback in the future. They need to go with best player available. And I think unless Kayvon Thibodeau's there, which would be an interesting, it's got to be in the conversation. I think the best player available when they're called to the clock is going to be a receiver, and obviously they're desperate for receiver help.
Yeah, I wonder if Evan Neal might get down to him too, Tony. Like if Aquanu goes early and then Cross goes, maybe the tackle falls too. I think that's possible. But, I'm with you. My guess is that the first wide receiver off will either be Jameson Williams or Drake London because they're different, right? I think Garrett Wilson, who is my wide receiver one, I think he's fantastic. You know, if Williams was healthy, it'd be him. You know, he could do a little everything, but, you know, London stands out because of his size and Williams stands out because of his speed. And I think a team will kind of become infatuated with one of those two guys. Unless they just trade the pick, they're picking a receiver at 10. So I think that is like the floor in terms of how early a guy will go, in my opinion, but it could be the Falcons. It could be the Falcons. We'll see. All right. Do either of you guys have a late riser or faller, someone that you think is either going to go, you can give me both too, that's going to go much higher than people think or much lower than people think as we approach draft day? Croc, let's start with you.
I think Alec Pierce, receiver out of Cincinnati. You know, this is a guy, when you cut on the film, there's not a lot he can't do. I think the lateral agility could be a little bit better, but in the sense of a guy who effortlessly gets off a press, he can win vertical, he can win with routes, intermediate routes. He's a hands catcher. He's a contested catch guy, and he has that deep speed. I think the versatility of him being able to play outside and be a legit slot, which I think in the NFL, he can make some big time money being a terrific slot and that type of weapon, understanding how to settle in zones. He's someone, the more I watch him, I'm like, man, the more I like him. They're not talking about him. They're talking about other guys going over him, like a George Pickens, things. But right now, for my money, I would take Alec Pierce over George Pickens. And we talk about maybe the Jets going receiver at top in the 10. If I'm the Jets, I hang tight. I don't take a receiver in the top 10. Go with another impact position. You're picking at the top. Matter of fact, you have multiple picks at the top of round 2. There will be some legit receivers there that can definitely help your ball club.
I'm going to go with Cameron Jurgens, the center from Nebraska. I've said all along that I think Cameron Jurgens is better value on day 2 than Tyler Linderbaum is in round 1. There is about a 10% chance right now that Cameron Jurgens ends up in the bottom half, the very bottom half of round 1 to a team like Tampa Bay or a team that needs a center guard. When you look at Cameron Jurgens, he's bigger than Tyler Linderbaum. He's much taller than Tyler Linderbaum. His arms are more than 2 inches longer than Tyler Linderbaum. He ran faster and tested as athletically as Tyler Linderbaum did in the postseason. You watch him since he was a freshman at Nebraska, and he is an explosive, nasty, outstanding zone blocker who gets out in the second and third level and destroys linebackers and defensive backs. He can pull across the line of scrimmage. He's got more position versatility than Tyler Linderbaum. You talked about the top interior offensive lineman this year's draft, Zion Johnson, a guard who may be able to play center. Kenyon Green, a guard who may be able to play tackle. Talk about Cole Strain, a guard who people project to center. Tyler Linderbaum is basically seen as solely a center. Jurgens is an outstanding center who can play guard. So I don't think he's going to slide into the late part of round 1. I would be surprised if he's still available by the time the middle of round 2 is still up. But if he doesn't go in the first half of round 2, I think the Ravens swipe him off the clock in the middle of that frame.
I'm going to go Logan Hall. I think, I was watching the tackles over the weekend again, a second go through, and his suddenness, his length, and his size, I think a team is going to become infatuated with him as someone you can play all across the line as a penetrator and a pass rusher, which is what people are looking for. I think he's going to sneak into the back end of that first round, and I think that's going to surprise some people. I think we'll probably go over a defensive tackle. A lot of people have rated ahead of him publicly. So I think Logan Hall is a guy to kind of keep an eye on late in this process as someone that might go up. Anyone you guys have that might go down? And I guess, Tony, I'll start with you on this. Do you think Linderbaum might drop to round 2?
No team that I spoke to has a first round grade on Tyler Linderbaum. Now, he could end up in the first round in the closing sections to a team like Cincinnati. But as far as a fall is concerned, player who's going to fall the most, I mean, anyone who's watched the show is not going to be surprised by what I say when I mention the name Kyle Hamilton. I mean, when we did our first show, John was surprised I didn't have Kyle Hamilton in my top 10. And I think where we sit today, it would be a surprise if Kyle Hamilton ends up in the top 10 of the draft. I'm hearing, I think anywhere from 11 to 15. I'm hearing 15 to 20. And remember, this is a guy that even some people still have as the top player in the draft, one of the top 3 picks in the draft. And he's just going to tumble into, I think, the middle portion of round 1, which is a huge drop. It doesn't mean that Kyle Hamilton won't be successful in the NFL. It just means that his style of play and his abilities and his limitations just aren't just don't translate well to an early pick in the first round.
I think Drake London, and this is a guy who I feel like everyone is all over the place on what he is. There are going to be teams that really love him. There are going to be other teams that are like, we're not as high on him because he's not this big separator. All right. So the teams that do want, because I feel like it's going to be a limited amount of teams that like, oh, we really love Drake London. Where are they going to be at in the sense of having, another player there and prioritizing maybe that position more than a receiver? So I can see a scenario where there are some people that feel like he might go 10th overall to the New York Jets. If I would say he's going to go maybe in the late 20s. And if he's sitting there at the top of the second round, that's another guy I wouldn't be surprised with.
Interesting. All right. Let's get to some of these evaluations, guys. And, we'll touch on some of the stuff with our mock draft with the pass rushers and receivers on Wednesday's show here. Let's start with running back. And we've kind of touched on him before, so we'll go through him pretty quick. Hassan Haskins, the running back out of Michigan. To me, he's a day 3, first and second down back, short area quickness, power, short yardage guy, probably not much in the passing game, but I think he can give you some value on first or second down on day 3. Tony, what do you think?
Yeah, not a bad pass catcher. He's a smart guy. I mean, he's smart and he's tough. He doesn't beat opponents with quickness or with speed, but he sees the field. He's got great vision. He knows where the open lanes are. He fights for that extra yardage. Like you said, a good short area, a short yardage back, someone who can come in and spell the starter on occasions. I would agree with you. Round 3, day 3, I'm hearing the early part of day 3 because he's not a great athlete, but he's an outstanding football player.
If you just watch him against Ohio State, you're like, okay, this is a guy that should be going at some point day 2. But watching him overall, you see he kind of fits a very specific type scheme, more of a power scheme type offense. Watching him try to run some more of the outside zone type stuff, it's like not necessarily a strength. I think he has good patience, and I think he has a little wiggle to kind of maneuver and utilize that in the sense of setting up his blocks. But again, the breakaway speed, not quite there. John, I think you undersold him a little bit as a pass catcher. I think the hands are really soft. I think he was getting in space there and in traffic with bodies around him. But again, not the dynamic running back. So I think when you do go to draft him day 3, you're going to have like this very, very, very specific role for him as opposed to a guy that you feel like can grow into a lot more.
Yeah, certainly a guy that can, catch dump off screens and stuff like that. No question. Go ahead.
Terrific pass protector. I thought the way he was setting up and standing guys up at the line of scrimmage, watching him against some of these teams, terrific. There was one game that was really kind of hard to get a read on, like what exactly he is, and that was Georgia. All right, now I know that defense is lights out. They're flying around. One thing that I did take note of in that game, though, he never gave up. Like when you were watching him, you didn't see the frustration setting in, especially early on. They were hounding him left and right, but eventually he broke off a couple of nice, good runs around the outside of that defense. So I like that, just kind of seeing, you talk about toughness, and I know a lot of people talk about the toughness in which he runs, but I think the mental toughness was something that stood out to me as well.
We've talked about George Pickens here, guys. Croc, you mentioned him early when you were talking about Alec Pierce. I feel like people all over the map on him. I've talked to some scouts that say, boy, I think he could be a first-round pick. You look at his highs, they're very high. Lance Zierlein mentioned that he thinks he could drop. He thinks there might be some teams worried about some off-the-field stuff with him. What do you guys think about George Pickens when you watch him on tape? Croc?
Remind me a lot of Riley Ridley. And maybe because they're both Georgia receivers, and not to get confused with Calvin Ridley. I think those guys are two definitely different type of receivers, but the nice fluid twitch movement skills. I think he does a really good job of kind of accelerating. I think top of the routes, he looks good, but I don't know. It's watching him. He's a true X receiver and he shows a little bit of craftiness, but I didn't see enough jump off in the sense of like, the run after catch, the pure just ability to do more and separate a little bit more. He was okay. I was expecting to see a little bit more, but some of it can be hidden in the Georgia offense. They don't do a whole lot with their receivers in the sense of giving them a lot of opportunities. They lean a lot on the run game. James Cook, White, those guys had a terrific tight end that did well. I had to go back to 2020 to watch more of Pickens, but there wasn't a whole lot that stood out in the sense of, I have to have this guy in the first round.
Got a lot of upside, but very unpolished. And when people were putting him in the first round, I never saw it. I think they didn't do a lot with him at Georgia because of the quarterback situation. And they really couldn't do too much with their receivers. I think he would have been better suited going back to Georgia for another season. If he goes back and he really capitalizes and develops his game, he's probably a first-round pick in 2023. I think you're getting a good athlete with excellent length and solid pass-catching hands, but a guy that's going to need work before he's truly NFL ready.
How about Bo Melton, Tony? I know he tested really well. He had a good day 2 in the rain at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, and that Rutgers offense was terrible last year. I mean, they put everything on Isaiah Pacheco because they couldn't throw the ball because the offensive line was terrible. He's one of those guys, Melton, that's going to go day 3, 4th round, maybe 5th round, that a few years from now, I believe people are going to say, wow, how did this guy not go in the 2nd round? How did this guy not go in the 3rd round? He catches the ball well. You saw him test off the charts. He's had his moments. I mean, he had moments of brilliance at Rutgers. Same thing with the running back Pacheco. Where you're like, wow, why don't we see this more often? But it was more the result of the fact that poor quarterback play, poor offensive line play at Rutgers. If he was in a different situation where they were able to throw the ball to him, I think he would have been an incredible producer and would have been a 2nd round choice. I think somebody's really going to get a steal with Melton on day 3.
Tons of screen passes that you see them throw at him. So you're able to kind of see him in space a little bit. That he could give you a little bit more as more of a dynamic runner, especially for someone who tested well. I think winning over the top, you could see it, but there were a good amount of times where I'm like, he's not quite creating that separation. But even when he didn't, I thought the ball tracking skills, the awareness, the body control, I think those things were solid. I don't think he played to the testing numbers consistently. So that's something that he can maybe learn to play with a little bit more high-end controlled speed. But overall, I thought, solid receiver. He looked more like day 3 to undrafted type guy where, like Tony says, people are going to find value in. Did he do any returning or anything like that? Because that's something that I feel like can help him a good amount.
He did, I believe, as a junior. I don't remember him doing it as a senior, but he did as a junior.
All right, Croc, let's go Isaiah Weston, a small school guy, Northern Iowa. But, if you just look at his measurements and his size and everything, like, holy cow, this guy should be a 2nd or 3rd round pick. But I know he had a lot of injuries while he was there. Your thoughts looking at Weston?
Big mover, but I thought he just played a little too slow for me. The times I did see him play fast, like in the slot, running slot phase, I'm like, oh, there it is. Okay, he has some up top speed where he's able to kind of get behind guys. But it was like when he knew he was running the go route, he can go. But anything else where he has to kind of throttle his speed down, especially against zone coverage, I thought he struggled to do anything to kind of free himself up. Versus man press, it was weird because I thought he did well working against man, but the settingness isn't quite there. The twitchiness isn't quite there. Again, for a big receiver, you don't quite expect that. But also the high-end athleticism, didn't quite see that. And then also playing at Northern Iowa, I don't think they targeted him enough for him to truly continue to kind of showcase that. But show good hands. I like that. Body control was good, but I would like to see him, again, another guy, play at a little bit more high-end control speed. I remember watching Hakeem Butler a few years ago, and I know he didn't quite work out as a receiver, but you still could see times where he's, running off guys, dropping his weight, getting in and out of breaks, using that length. I would have liked to see that a little bit more from Weston.
Yeah, as a redshirt freshman, I watched Northern Iowa, and I was like, who is this guy? And it was Weston, and he really caught my eye back in 2019. And he was a guy who consistently made big plays down the field, didn't really play to his speed, but showed himself to be a good vertical receiver, good hand catcher, really didn't progress. Now, I don't know whether that was because of COVID or what, but didn't progress the way I had hoped. He's got the underlying ability and the talent to be a number 4 receiver at the next level. There's no doubt about it. I don't know that he's going to get drafted. I right now have him graded as a 6th round choice. He's got a tremendous amount of ability, but, sort of like George Pickens, he's got the fundamental, or he's got the natural ability. You're just going to have to develop him into a football player, and he's going to have to learn the details of his position. I think at the very least, if Weston doesn't make an active roster in 2022, you'll see him on a practice squad somewhere.
All right, Tony, I'll let you stand for your man, Tyquan Thornton. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, long, fast receiver. Obviously, he was slightly slower than his teammate Kalon Barnes at the combine. Catches the ball very well. It gets downfield, tracks the pass in the air. Does a great job making the deep throw. He's got to learn to run. He's got to learn to run routes. He's got to improve his route tree. He's got to learn to catch those underneath passes. It's not just a situation at the next level where he's going to be able to outrun opponents down the field. A little bit of a thinner guy, tall, thin guy. So you're kind of concerned about how he's going to, if he's going to be able to take a beating, how he's going to hold up. But again, it's someone that you can even at that length line him up in the slot, line him up a few yards off the line of scrimmage. When the ball snaps, just let him run down the field and throw him the ball, and he's going to outrun most of the defensive backs.
He's definitely a guy that plays to his 40 times speed, right? We talk about some of these other guys maybe didn't quite see that speed on the film. You see it on him. He's consistently getting behind defensive backs. Now, where he can use a lot of work is, I think, at the top of his routes. And a lot of times we see that with these really fast guys where they know how to really go, but then it's like, man, can you really go, get out, and then sail to go, and then sit your route down and get out as few steps as possible. That's why a lot of times we see some of the best route runners in the NFL. They're 4 or 5 guys, because they can come off just as fast, but it's easier for them to throttle down. With Thornton, he can learn that. But I was really surprised with his ball tracking skills, his ability to make the contested catches. I didn't think while watching him, oh man, he's just a speed guy. I think the short area separation and his ability to kind of run away from guys utilizing the speed, that's definitely there. The hands catcher, catching the ball away from his body, that was there. So I actually didn't really watch him heading into the combine. He goes, he blows it away. I get a lot of people asking me what's my opinion on him. I go and watch him, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that he was a better receiver than I was expecting to see. And I think there's going to be those parallels to Denzel Mims. I think Denzel Mims was a lot stiffer of a receiver. I mean, to the point where, a lot of times you barely saw his knees bend when he was trying to get off a press and whatnot. So different type of receivers. I think he plays a little bit more to his speed than Denzel Mims did as well. So I actually like him. If you like Denzel Mims, I think you should like Thornton a little bit more.
All right, let's go through a lot of these Senior Bowl guys. That's kind of the next group here. Jake Ferguson, tight end out of Wisconsin. Croc, to me, if you want a day 3 blocker at tight end that's going to catch a bunch of 6-yard passes for you, Jake Ferguson's your guy.
Oh, yeah. He'd been groomed to be a terrific blocker at the next level, whether it's pass protection, run blocking. he does a terrific job with his hand placement. In space, he blocks well. And sometimes you see some tight ends kind of lose that part of the blocking matchup. Oh, I got to get out in space, and then they'll kind of get off of blocks. But I think he did that well. And I think as a pass catcher, he's not offering a whole lot, but just in the sense of kind of initial little quickness, if you can get the ball on him right now, I think that's an area where he can do well. Then obviously using his big frame to get in spots and settle in open areas and zones. But overall, if you draft him, you're going to lean on him to be more of that blocking tight end and see if he can grow into more as a pass catcher.
Yeah, he's a solid pass catcher. I wouldn't take anything away from as far as being a pass catcher. He's just not a great athlete. He was really good at Wisconsin as a freshman, but he never really improved because he doesn't have the speed. Didn't test well at the combine. He plays to his measurables. He plays to his computer numbers, which aren't that great. So I think he's a day 3 guy that could be a very good number 2 tight end at the next level.
All right, let's go to the offensive line, guys. Cole Strange, Tennessee Chattanooga, a guy that was very feisty down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. I thought he did a really nice job down there. Kind of a guard center hybrid, Tony. Your thoughts?
Yeah, guy was moving up draft boards. I've talked about Cameron Jergens before. Strange is a guy that could fit into the late part of round 2 for a team that doesn't get their guard they want to develop into a center in the first round or in the early part of round 2. He's a big guy. He's a wide guy. Played tackle at Tennessee Chattanooga. Played guard at Tennessee Chattanooga. Played some center at the Senior Bowl. He's got some growth potential. He shows good agility. He can adjust. I think could end up in late round 2. Probably early round 3, but someone that's on the rise that we're talking about.
Yeah, my first note on him, moving bodies versus Kentucky. And I like to see guys against some of their better competition. And we play at Tennessee Chattanooga, you're not playing the top end talent week in and week out, but see how he was moving bodies against Kentucky, did a really good job with that. I thought he stayed on block extremely well. His pass protection was well, not a finesse guy in space. So, if you wanted to look pretty in space, that's not quite him. He's a little bit more of I don't want to call him an overachiever because he went to a small school, but it just doesn't look as pretty in space with the athleticism. But overall, I thought he did a lot of really good things, reaching guys in the next level. He's one of those guys that really will annoy defensive linemen because he's always trying to get on them, finish blocks, things like that. So I thought that was all good.
All right, to speed this up, instead of doing a full evaluation on this player, Tony, I'm just going to have you talk about the comparison between Dylan Parham and Cole Strange, because I think they kind of are going to be looked at similarly, right, in terms of the positions that they play. So how do you think teams are kind of stacking those guys as they maybe choose between them in midday two?
I think that Strange is a more natural projection to center, which is what teams like. You can more naturally play center or guard, where Parham, you're going to have to develop him into a center. I think Strange is, besides being a body mover, he's also better on the second level than Parham. Parham's going to go early, though. Parham will go third round soon after Strange.
Yeah, I think Parham's probably just a better, smoother athlete, smoother mover, I think, a little bit on the offensive line, too. All right, let's go to Darian Kennard, another Senior Bowl guy, Croc. Again, he is the body build of a tackle. I'm not sure he can move well enough to stay there. Do you see him as more of a guard? Your thoughts?
First notes, really big, but lacks athleticism. Very first note that I have. Definitely is a power scheme type guy. He moves forward very well, but in pass protection, especially out there on the edge, and I don't know if it's worried about the speed or whatever, he can get bull rushed. And I'm like, man, you're too big and strong of a guy to get pushed back into the quarterback's lap the way you are. So I do think that he's someone that probably would be better suited to play guard. My last note on him, bad feet in space. I think a lot of those combinations of what I just said means he is probably someone that should play a little bit more inside.
Probably going to go a lot later than people think. He's got some off-field issues. People project him as a third rounder. I'm hearing day 3, maybe 4th round. He's got to step up his game. I mean, he's kind of leveled off the past couple of years. Didn't take the next step. Coming into the year, scouts thought he was a top 45 selection. He's not really lived up to expectations.
Tony, Max Mitchell was a guy that a lot of people talked to me about heading into the Senior Bowl. Then I watched him a lot down there. And frankly, I just wasn't all that impressed. I don't think he did well. So you're nodding, Croc. You are too. Your guys' thoughts on Mitchell. Tony, you first.
When you watch him on film, he's a real good tackle at Louisiana, and you wonder why. Good fundamentals. It shows good use of angles. Maybe he was just intimidated. And then he tested well at the combine. So I think it's one of those situations with Mitchell where you're going to take him late, maybe 6th or 7th round. You're going to see how he reacts when he's in camp. Does he step up his play? Is he seemingly intimidated the way he was at the Senior Bowl? Is he able to play up to and above the level of competition? The fundamentals are there. The size is there. The athleticism is there. Maybe it's just between his ears.
Yeah, I mean, some of my first notes, good feet in space. You start talking about athleticism, good hand placement, things like that. And then you watch him against Appalachian State, and they just destroyed him. I mean, whether it was, running around, running the hoop, he couldn't handle the speed, whether it was the power, they were throwing him off. I mean, it was one of the worst games. So then I was like, okay, there has to be better film out there on him. I watched him against Texas, and I thought Texas was better. But again, still some of the same issues, kind of really being able to control guys when they are giving him a little bit more to think about. So I probably would be off on Max Mitchell a little bit. Again, if you do like him, do not watch the Appalachian State film. Early on, it looks okay. First couple drives, okay, I like it. And then after that, they just started. It was almost like they were just taking turns teeing off on him.
All right, let's swap over to the defensive side of the ball, Croc. We talked about DeMarvin Leal, I think, on either our first or second episode. We had a little bit of an extended talk on him. We even talked about him since. He's kind of been quiet in the pre-draft process. Your thoughts on him? I struggle figuring out where I'm going to put him. Like, is he an edge? Is he a 3 tech? I think he's probably more of an inside guy. Your thoughts looking at Leal?
I think he can definitely be a 4-3 end, but he'd be your big end, right? And a lot of teams going more towards that too high cover 4 type scheme, especially on early downs, they're going to want that big guy out there that can kind of set the edge, but still give them something against the pass. They want a guy that can really control the line of scrimmage on the run because you don't have that extra guy in the box there. So from that standpoint, I think he will fit that. But again, I think he profiles more, if you're talking about on an every down basis, more of a 3-4 in type guy. I was really impressed with his power as a rusher. I thought that was good. Even getting to the quarterback, he was really quick inside, being able to disengage from blockers and chase down guys from the backside, running backs. I thought he redirected extremely well. I think for a guy that was bigger and you're not assuming that he's like the speed rusher off of the edge, I thought he was a really good athlete and a difference maker. He made a lot of plays.
2 up and down for me. I mean, he's going to go in the 3rd round. I think he's got the style and the substance of a 3 technique tackle. Maybe he's an end in the 2 and a 3-man front. Just kind of disappears for times, has some flashes, and like you said, has been very quiet. And I think that's a guy that a lot of people thought through the late part of the season when everyone knew he was going to enter the draft. Why, you're talking about the top 45 here. You're talking about a guy who could fit into the late part of round 1. Just has never come to fruition for layout.
Yeah, leaving a little meat on the bone there. I agree. All right, Tony, me and you real quick. Let's look at Brandon Smith, linebacker out of Penn State. I talked to Penn State's play-by-play guy a couple of days ago, just kind of get a feel for some of their guys. And he basically described Brandon Smith as a great athlete that's still trying to figure out how to play football.
I guess off the 2020 film, Smith looked like, the next coming of linebackers from Penn State to me. And then he kind of took a step back last year. So I don't know which one we're getting, but he's a tremendous athlete. He's more of your traditional off the ball, in space, your 4-3 outside linebacker that can, play the run, track down ball handlers in pursuit, drop off the line in coverage. I just like this 2020 film a lot more than his 2021 film. So I'm wondering where he's going. A good coach gets into his head, you got a starting linebacker at the next level.
All right, let's go to our next linebacker here. Darian Beavers out of Cincinnati, one of the linebackers on that team. He almost looks like an old school linebacker to me, Croc. He's a little bit thicker. He's got some meat on the bone there. Like, he's a guy that you want, like, at the line of scrimmage, like, taking on blockers in the run game and trying to make some plays.
Yeah, I think you kind of described him perfectly there. He's a bigger guy that I think he moves well. You won't confuse him with a guy like Nakobe Dean or anything with his sideline pursuit. But I thought he took on blocks very well and shed them well, kind of free himself up to be able to get in on tackle. I think it was a high effort, high motor type guy. And I wonder if there is some pass rush ability there, because watching him against Notre Dame, he had his sack coming off of the edge where it looked good. The bend was good. The hand usage was good. I'm like, man, maybe they should have done a little bit more with that, as opposed to just leaving him as an off-ball linebacker. So I don't know if there's a team that's like, oh, maybe he could be a 3-4 outside backer type guy that can, be stout against the run, but also give you some pass rush ability. He might be able to do that, as opposed to being a off-ball guy who might have to be in coverage a little bit more.
Tone?
Yeah, he is a punch in the face type of linebacker. He is a tough, nasty guy who does not back down to a challenge. He goes all out. I think what happened is, as far as helping his draft stock, is he tested a lot better than people expected. People think he was a slow, high 4.7, 4.8 guy, runs in the 4.6s at Pro Day, tests relatively well what he did at the combine, which really improved his draft stock and cemented him as a day 2 pick. I think he can play inside in a 3-4. I think he can play outside in a 4-3. He's got that versatility.
Croc, you mentioned App State before. So DeMarco Jackson, was he one of the guys wrecking Max Mitchell in that game?
I think if we're talking about moving forward, I thought he was terrific. I mean, the closing speed, it jumped out. Again, I don't know what his 40 time was, but just seeing how he was able to close on a quarterback that's trying to move in space, terrific. But anything outside of moving forward, I had a lot of questions with. The sideline pursuit for someone that showed that type of closing speed moving forward. I didn't see that same type of pursuit running sideline to sideline. Talked about Nakobe Dean and his ability to really track guys down and chase them down.
And his combine 40 time 4.55. So not bad.
I mean, so he's flying. So I straight ahead, or even at angles where he's moving forward, I see that type of closing speed. But I ain't quite see that when guys are running sideline to sideline in the pursuit from that standpoint. He played extremely well moving forward. I thought he put himself in a lot of vulnerable positions, which made me question his instincts, where it's like, okay, is it the defense? And this is just what they're asking him to do, to where he always just kind of looks lost in there around the line of scrimmage? Or is he just bad with the instincts? So those were some of the questions I had with him.
When you watch DeMarco Jackson on film, he's exactly what I would describe him to be. He's a downhill linebacker. He's a guy that played best between the tackles running forward. The thing was, he showed some cover skills at the Senior Bowl. He did a lot better in space than people expected at the Senior Bowl. Then he went to the Combine, and he tested much better than anyone expected to. So, as Eric said, is it the player or is it the system and what they asked him to do in the system? Yeah, looking at it from the overall point of view, what we saw at the Senior Bowl versus what was expected, and the way he tested the Combine, which was what was expected, I think is more the system, which we've seen with a lot of players. I think he's going to be a day 3 pick. I think he's an inside linebacker in a 3-4. I think he's going to be a real good player on Sunday.
All right, we did have a request from Marcus Jones. We talked about him a couple weeks ago, though. So I suggest a couple weeks ago you guys go listen to us talk about him. Underside slot corner, return guy, electric player. So go.
He's old too. He's old and he had double shoulder surgery.
Yep.
So those are things. There's no testing numbers on him, on a guy who is smaller with shorter arms. Then you have the injuries in there, and where is he going to play? I think he's a guy that people, he has the hot name. And when I say he's old, I think he's about to be like 24 years old. So he's a guy that has like a hot name, and he is really good. Like the play is good.
Yeah, Croc, I'll tell you, you watch him on tape, nobody runs away from that dude. He is sticky as hell.
The play is there, but there's going to be all these other question marks with lack of size, with the durability, with the injuries, with the age. I think those are enough to make him drop. I think he's a round 3 guy, but we'll see where he ends up going.
I think he's a nickel, maybe dime back at the next level.
Yeah.
His greatest value will be as a return specialist.
Yeah, and by the way, you did see it on tape because they played him outside in college, and people would big boy him for passes down the sideline all the time. So no question. I think he has to move inside, Tony. I'm with you. All right, and I'm going to let you finish here, Tony, because I know this guy's your guy, Nick Cross.
Going to go much earlier than people expect. He could go 2nd round, latest early 3rd round. Big athletic guy, 214 pounds, ran very fast at the Combine, had exceptional testing numbers, plays to those numbers on film. A bigger safety who's got excellent ball skills, excellent cover skills. Unlike Kyle Hamilton, you can put Nick Cross over the slot receiver, and he's not a liability. Kind of a hidden gem that a lot of people are not talking about. Like I said, maybe late 2nd round. I think early 3rd round, mid-3rd round, the latest. And a guy who I believe will quickly be starting into his, or will be starting early into his rookie season.
Croc.
Yeah, a few hiccups with eye discipline issues and some big moments, and people are going to probably point to those few plays as to why you shouldn't take.
It's funny, Croc. I was going to say there were a couple of times he was playing a third of the field on defense. They ran that little the post out, and then he's spinning around, and guys are wide open. There were a few of those that scared the hell out of me. I'm with you.
Yeah, and I think people are going to point to that, but I try to look at somebody's full body of work. So not so much just 3 plays that I can point to. Oh, this is terrible, and I'm really big on what can you fix. What can't you fix? And I think a guy with his top end athleticism and his ability, I can coach him on fixing his eyes, right? Like, hey, bad eyes right here. This is where your eyes should be. Let's not let that happen again. And you can work to improve from there. But the athleticism and the upside and even some of the other things you put on film, those are things that are a little bit harder to coach.
No, look, I'm with you. His tools are great. If you could, I guess when you see a safety and you see a couple big plays, it scares you. But you're right. If you could figure that stuff out, 100%. All right, guys. I'll give you guys
real quick, John. It when you watch it though? Is it you have to ask yourself? Is this something that I can't fix? Can he not improve on this? There are other things, right, where we talk about some of the questions with Kyle Hamilton and maybe a lack of athleticism or coverage ability on smaller guys that you might have questions with. We saw that against Cincinnati, him getting beat on the corner. It's like, man. Can I fix that with Kyle Hamilton? And I don't know. But with Nick Cross, you can if it's just an eye discipline issue. You can improve on that for sure.
Yeah, you're drafting guys based on what they can do and will do, not what they did do before, right? So you're right. If you could teach that, he certainly has the size, as Tony mentioned, the athleticism and all that stuff to take a step. All right, as I mentioned, we're doing our final mock draft on Wednesday. That'll get posted sometime Wednesday afternoon, hopefully. So give me final thoughts here, guys. We're 3 days out. Anything you want to add in or throw in before we say goodbye? Tony, let's start with you.
Let's get it on, man. I mean, it's who knows? Now they're saying there's going to be a surprise at pick number 1. I mean, all I know is there's going to be tons of news and tons of rumors, and we won't know until Thursday. And I think the most important thing is the draft is the beginning. It's not the ending, because people will go crazy. Our team had a great draft. Our team did all it is names on a piece of paper. Let's see what happens when those names on a piece of paper take the field come training camp when the season opens in September.
Croc.
Oh, no big takeaway, man. Just excited. I know we got the mock draft coming up. I'm excited to see where you guys feel certain players will end up going and what surprises there are there. But I think this is exciting. We, obviously talked about a lot of prospects. I think 30 prospects over the last 2 episodes. So plenty of information for a lot of the fans out there listening to the draft season show.
Yeah, and I was happy too that we got all the requests for guys in round 2 and round 3 and round, day 3. We didn't get any round 1 requests here really. It was all stuff later in the draft, which I think was great.
But
so
because people, everybody, the Yallow media is always talking about who they're going to get 2, who they're going to get 15, and teams are built really on day 2 and day 3.
No question. I rearranged who gets what teams for our final mock. You guys have them. So fans, stay tuned for Wednesday's show as we try to give our final, which will probably be awful predictions of who's going to pick who in the 2022 NFL draft. For Eric Crocker and Tony Pauline, I'm John Schmeelk. Thanks for being with us. This is draft season.